Hello, welcome to our oil pastel class. Today we are going to be doing an abstract floral piece. We're using mixed media cardstock, a very thick weight. I think it's about 184 pounds that I've cut down to be 5 by 7. I'm going to go ahead and use artist tape. This is just an artist tape that I got from my local hobby store. It doesn't have to be black. I think they come in a variety of sizes. I'm going to go ahead and tape off the edges. And I do this for a few reasons. I like that nice clean border, that white border that it allows when I tape off the edges. And also it helps my paper from moving. Since I am using a paper instead of a canvas, it's very lightweight and that can move. And one other reason that I like to tape off the edges is so that when I apply a mat on top of it, it gives it a surface that the surface area of the mat is not touching my oil pastels. Your oil pastels will take a while to dry, or actually, I mean, they might not even ever really dry, but just like oil paint, it's better if they are not touching something. So if you're going to frame your painting, then I would suggest putting a mat around it and then putting glass in your frame. And so that way, once you're matting it, you're allowing a space or a gap between your painting and the glass. So that is one of the reasons why I enjoy putting a border around my oil pastels. I am calling this a painting. The oil pastels were originally created from Picasso, who wanted a way to put paint in a stick. So those originals are created by Senlier, and they make pastels, oil pastels. Those are my favorite pastels. They're very soft and rich. They're also very expensive. So you get quality depending on what type of budget you have. These I actually found at my local hobby store as well. I am not sure about the make of them, but I tested them out and they are soft. They're kind of a middle of the line. They're not super hard, but they're not as soft as the Senlier pastels, but they do work really well and they blend well. And they are about a third or a fourth of the price of the Senlier. So don't feel like you have to buy the most expensive pastels, especially if you are just getting started. Start with probably not the student brands because those are really hard and they do not blend very well, especially once you've used the good stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and for this one, I'm going off of a floral bouquet and I am just gonna be using the colors. So this is gonna be an abstract piece, but with oil pastels, you want to layer them. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start putting color on the page. And so following the lines. And so this is going to be a light pink flower. Also, I have this taped to a cardboard backing. This comes with I get a lot of cardboard backings with large paper purchases. So this makes a great surface to work on. And you can see, you can just make your marks. When you are using pastels, you can see that there are many colors just in this one stick. And if you don't want to transfer that, you might want to wipe it off. You can either wipe it off on here, or you can take a paper towel and wipe off the edge and see that brought some pink out. I don't really mind so much if I pull some color in from a different piece, but if you do, then you can clean off your edges. So you're gonna layer your paint, your oil pastel, and I'm actually gonna use my white. I use my white as a blending tool a lot, but that also gives it a nice pastel, very light base. And you can push hard or you can push soft. It also depends on what kind of pastel it is. And since this is a rose, it has a lighter outside, a lighter outside. And then I'm gonna give it some dark on the inside. because the petals hide the inside, and that is why it's a little bit darker there. And so I'm just taking various shades and making my flowers. There's a little bit of white in here. So it might leave little sheds. Your oil pastel might shed a little bit. So you can use your finger and just pick that up. You can go back with the actual pastel that you used. I tend to use so many colors that it's hard to go back and know exactly which color I need to use. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use my finger. You just barely touch it. Okay, we have another. So this looks like a peony. A little bit of white. And I'll probably go back and do my shadow later, like my background. So you just want to follow the colors that are in your bouquet. Okay. So when you are looking at a bouquet or even a flower, you might say, hey, that is a pink rose. And so an untrained eye might say, well, I'm just going to paint the whole thing pink. But if you do that, you are actually flattening your artwork. You're not allowing it to have dimension. So when you add in those shadows and those highlights, so that would be like your white or a lighter color, you are allowing your shape or your object to have dimension. And you want your object to have dimension. Okay, actually have a little background here. I did find with this set of pastels that working in one direction helps the look of it to be more cohesive. So if I went horizontally, it would not, well, I'm doing vertical marks here and then I decided to go horizontally, that would not look as nice. That would not make my painting look very cohesive. Okay, so I'm actually going ahead and adding in a little bit of the background here. So I'm adding some dark blue, but it also kind of has a little green tint. So I'm gonna go back over that dark blue with a little bit of green, this dark green. I'll probably go back and highlight it as I need to. Let's see, this has a little bit of darker area right here in this peony. Okay, you don't need to worry about making perfect marks. It's actually a little nicer if you don't make them perfect. You bring in some different marks. So you can see here, I've had it a little bit green, and that is because this pastel had some other colors on the edge. So I'm gonna have to make that work. This has a yellow center. I'm not sure exactly what this flower is called, but it's beautiful. It looks like the center looks like a peony and the outside looks like a rose. I wish I had a green thumb, but I do not. More often, I will have a blue thumb, and that will be from painting. And I just have to be okay with that. That is, maybe the painting is more of my talent than the growing plants. If I grow a plant, I will probably kill it, and that would be sad. Okay, this has a few colors inside as well. That's okay. You can make little marks if you want. I'm gonna go back. Look at all the colors on the edge of that white pastel. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it off. Still kept a couple, that's okay. I'm gonna blend a little bit. I'm gonna start on my lighter color, so my yellow. If I started on this pink, then what would that do to my pastel? That would actually give it a lot of pink on the exterior. And then I'd have to wipe it off again. So this part of the flower is actually supposed to be a peach. So I'm gonna go over it with a little bit of yellow. Let's see if that helps give it a peach color. So the pink and yellow gives more of a peach color. Which I'm liking. So I'll go back with a little bit of pink here, and I might go back with my white. And when you're just starting out, you might think, it doesn't really look like much. But once you add all those colors in, it's gonna start to form your painting to make a whole lot more sense. If you add too much color and you're not happy with it, then you can always, my nice palette knife, you can always scrape it away. You could use your fingernail if you want to, which doesn't sound very appealing. You can use your paper towel or your finger to smooth in that color so that you can go back over it and add a different one. I'm gonna go back in, add a little bit more color. Okay, so you can see how it's leaving behind some pieces, some flakes. So I went ahead and cleaned that up. Okay, I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna add some pretty purple and white flowers. This one's actually hiding at the bottom, but I'm gonna go ahead and move it so it can be more in my frame. Also, oil pastels are very messy, so just keep that in mind. Art in general can be very messy. So when you are getting ready for your day, make sure you know that. If you're going to be doing art, be prepared to get messy. Especially my art. I feel like most of my paintings and artworks are very messy, but I actually enjoy that. I like getting to make a mess. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off the edge of my white. Let's see, behind this one, we have some more pink. Just a little bit of pink hiding behind this flower. It goes all the way back here. So I'm gonna go ahead and add some color right there. Some white. And the white is actually adding highlights as well as blending this pink in. It's helping cover the entire surface area of this paper. Sometimes I go so quickly that I don't actually end up covering all of the paper. You want to make sure that you're covering your paper. And I even like to blend it a little bit between the flowers. I'm adding the center of this flower. I don't want it to stick out too much, so I made it a little bit lighter. It's like this one needs a little bit of lightening, the center. Behind this rose, we have a little bit in the background. Looks like we have some leaves that look to be a little bit of an olive green. Now I don't have an olive green in my palette, so I am having to make it. So I'm using this kind of tawny brown, and I'm going over it with some green. You can see it's kind of making that olive green. You can go really fast with your paintings, or you can take your time. That is really dependent upon how you work. If you are if you're a quick worker, or if you are kind of a perfectionist and need to take your time. I think that I work quickly, and then I realize that I don't. and I am a perfectionist. And I like to take my time. Got a big, lush looking flower right here. Got some pink. Probably gonna put some orange in it and then cover it with some whites. So a lot of my classes are actually going to be color theory classes, because I will also be sharing how you get all these different colors. You don't necessarily need to know how to draw everything, even though I think some classical education is not a bad thing. So classical would be like understanding proportion or dimension, like for foreshortening. So if you have something that's closer to you, it's going to look bigger. That would be something that you would learn in art class. But I feel like if you can get the color down, then you can get the rest of it to work. It's learning, it's reteaching yourself how to think about things and how to look at things. That's important. Most people might see things one-dimensionally when really there's so many colors and shapes and textures. I would challenge you maybe to keep a sketchbook and write down all the colors that you see in an item. So maybe write down the name of the item and then name all the colors that you see in it. And that would just be an exercise teaching you how to see things differently, to look past the ordinary and see things as an artist would. I'm drawing or painting a yellow rose, it looks like. Again, I wish I knew all these names. They're so pretty. But this one has a deep center with some orange in it. It even has some dark colors. Like I'm gonna add a little bit of brown. You can see I haven't used this color yet, but I'm gonna add a little bit in here. And this is the center that's being hidden from us in shadows because of the other petals, because of the way that the petals are folding into each other. And see how this white is blending in. And again, I mean, if you wanted to use yellow to blend, you can. There's actually, with oil pastels, you can get like a colorless blender. I know that Senlier has them, and I'm sure other sets do as well. But that way you are not using the white. So if you didn't want to lighten your painting with the white, you don't have to. A little bit of this green coming out of here. We actually have some green here as well. But as I've been teaching you, it's not just one color. So I'm going to use, let's see, that green and then a little bit of a brighter green. This one right here is almost, the one that we just used is almost a lime green. And I'm filling it with a little bit of grass green. You know, I'm going to go back with my whites. Gonna blend a little bit. Okay. And I feel the need to adjust this just a little bit. I feel like we lost a little bit of that purple. Some of that purple went away, but it's right here too. There we go. And I would encourage you definitely to go back and reassess your artwork. If you need to fix something, then go for it. Don't Don't just put some color down and say, I'm done. Because I know that you're probably not. You probably have a lot more work that needs to be done for it. Okay, we have a nice bright pink flower. Actually a very large flower. We'll see about how we do that proportion. And this one has some almost blues in the center as its shadows. So you know we've got pink. So this is a very pink flower. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of blue right here. And this is adding some shadows to our flower. And we have some darker blues in the middle. I'm going to go back and I'm going to add even more color on top of this middle dark blue, because this is, again, the area that's hidden from us. So layering this green on top of that blue makes it a much darker color. I am going to add in some darker shades on the exterior as well. And this one is a peony as well. I'm just going to go and add a little bit of shading. You don't have to shade the whole thing. And if I shade a little bit outside of it, it kind of extends this color. So it softens the edges a little bit. We have some white in the middle, so I'm not worrying about shading so much in the middle, but adding in those highlights. You can clean off your oil pastel if you'd like, because I don't really want to pull too much into this flower. Maybe even taking your yellow, kind of blending that back in here. Here, almost like you're blending this flower into the other. I'm going to create another purple flower at top. This one has almost a gray center, the same as this. Can add a little bit of gray with some highlights. Also, don't feel that your colors have to be perfect. You might choose to create a painting based off of one palette. So maybe you want your painting to be all about blue. And so you choose, 10 different blues to use. And it doesn't really look like what the original would look like, but that is the style that you have chosen for that piece. And how you shade things and the colors that you pick can help determine the shape. I'm going to add a very light pink flower. Actually, we're going to do a light pink right here. I'm going to go ahead and add some white. Add my pink on top of the white. And then I'm going to add the beige on top of the pink. So I have added 3 different colors here. And I am going to add white back on. That is going to help bring all those colors together. Let's add a little bit of separation right here with some of that background. And it makes it look like it is leaves too. We have a nice big yellow pretty flower here. We're only going to get to see some of it. And it's yellow, but it has those highlights. So some of it might look peach. You might see white in it. The center has yellow and green. We have a lot of peach flowers right here. This one has very dark center. And it looks like a little bit of pink on the outside. And then once we blend that together, see the pretty colors it brings. It pulls them all together. Okay. Now we are going to add a little bit of our darker color right here to add some separation between these flowers to give it the illusion of this background, like the leaves. I'm gonna go back in and fix this a little bit because I brought that highlight in a little too much. A nice pretty pink flower up here. We have some purple in this flower. We have some light areas. And then we're going to go through and add our highlights and blend a bit. And I'm pressing down a little bit harder to get that white area. Okay. And we actually have some green coming up here. And that would be stems. And I'm still keeping the same markings, little tiny markings here. I'm gonna add a little shadow into here. And we've got a highlight coming from the stem. Keep that highlight there. And a little tiny one right here. And I am going to go ahead. It's got some arms coming out with little bitty flowers. I'm going to be layering white on top of that. I'm adding this pink so the stem doesn't just stick out by itself. A little green here. Okay, so you already know the background's going to be here, so I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. And there is going to be white on top of that. But I'll start with this darker green. And then this blue. So because I put that gray down a little bit before it, we'll have a little bit different shade than the other side. Go ahead and add some white in. We'll add some visual interest with this. Maybe blend some of the colors a bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and where my flowers would be. Since the flowers aren't really going to show up, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow here. So I'm making them, instead of white, they're going to be yellow. I even add a little bit here. And part of that is just to add that visual interest. It doesn't have to look exact. Remember, it can look a little bit different. And you can see that our flower painting is starting to come together. You'd be surprised by your piece. I feel like this piece right here needs a little bit of something. It was too hard of a line. Okay, and here we need a little bit of background. So I'm doing, my background is that dark hunter green over, or the dark hunter green combined with that dark blue. And I'm switching up how I'm pulling them together. Sometimes I'm doing the blue first and sometimes doing the green. You can even use this little bit of gray in the background to add a little bit of variation. Did that gray there. See how it made this one a little bit lighter? This gray looks like it might have a lot of white in it. So that might be blocking off some of that color. Okay. I'm gonna blend a little bit into this flower. You can see I went over the flower, which is not what I wanna do. I'm gonna take my beige, just kind of go back over that. And you can go back with a little bit of shadow because my backgrounds don't normally have so much white. I was just filling in some of the area so that I don't have white in the background too. I got the actual paper showing through. I do like it when my flowers blend a little into the background. And I like a little bit of that green, the bright color showing through. It's very pretty. Add some brightness to my painting. I feel like I need a little bit more of that. And then here we're gonna have some of that bright. That's actually a little bit of that purple flower, so we're just gonna make it really light. And I'm gonna go back over it with that white. Okay, so now we really just have this area to get to. And this area is going to have a little bit of an orange flower right here. So I am going to start with my orange actually. Has a little bit of pink. It's a light pink, so I'm just going to go really lightly here. A little bit of that brown in the center. Oh, we need to minimize this a little bit. We'll use some yellow to make that not pop quite so much, because you can see we have soft colors everywhere. I really like those soft colors. This gray is actually a really good blender because it's not so white or so dark that it tries to take over. Okay, back to this piece. I'm going to use a little bit of our beige on the outside. And then you know what's coming next is going to be our white. I'm going to go ahead and clean this off. Just kind of blend these colors, but not so much. I'm not blending every single stroke. You can see my hands are getting very colorful. Okay, I'm going to take some of this beige in the middle. Maybe I want a little bit more blue. And then we have one more flower right here. It's going to be a very pretty pink with some almost lime green leaves surrounding it, which will be a nice finish to this painting. And so right here we have some green, but what's so funny is the green actually has a little bit of pink in it too. It's almost like it's trying to blend in, be part of the crowd and fit in. As an artist, you do not want to fit in. You want to find your style, what works for you. But if you fit in, what is going to set your work apart from everybody else? I think everybody has something to give. Whether it is your style of art or it is your heart. To me, art combines both. It combines something that I love to do with getting the opportunity to maybe help somebody find what works for them. Find a way to express themselves that they've never been able to do before. And I hope that you're able to do that with my classes. I hope that you are able to be confident and realize that your art is not what you learned when you were in school as a child. Your art can be very different. There are so many styles out there right now. I encourage you to try them all. See what you love. You might be really surprised. Okay, so I have filled in my painting, and now I'm going to take my finger, I'm going to go back. I'm going to take up these big pieces of oil pastel that have landed on my painting. If you see any holes or pieces of the paper coming through, now is a good time to go ahead and fill that in. Again, I would recommend using a nice mat to put a barrier between your artwork and your painting. Some people prefer not to seal their oil pastels at all. I have used the Sennelier spray. It actually helps preserve your pastels, and it helps it not to come off on your fingers. I haven't noticed it changing any of the colors or affecting the pastel work. I think it is a good alternative if you are worried about it smudging, because the oil pastels are very soft, especially the good quality ones. So that is what I would recommend. I'll put that in the class materials too. And I just use 2 to 3 coats for that. Light coats, and I go back and do it. I don't do it all at once. So I will spray, and then I'll go back maybe a few hours later and do another coat. It is very smelly, so you have to be in a well-ventilated area. And the way I know if I need to do more is if I run my fingers over it very gently and any color comes up, then it's not sealed enough. So it really does take 2 to 3 coats. That's what I found works really well. Okay, so this has been the tutorial for abstract florals. You're giving it, you have the colors, you have the layout, but what really makes it that abstract is it is not the exact flower. You're focusing here more on the colors and the placement of the colors to make the shape. So maybe if you backed up and you took a look at this piece, it might look like the flowers that you just painted. So I hope that you enjoyed it. Hope it was a little bit freeing for you. And I can't wait to see you in our next class. Have a wonderful day.